Picture this. In 2018, teenagers across America started filming themselves biting into laundry detergent pods, literally poisoning themselves for internet fame. Meanwhile, millions of people became convinced the Earth was flat, despite centuries of scientific proof. And right now, as we speak, there's probably some conspiracy theory spreading faster than wildfire across social media. Here's what's fascinating and terrifying. These weren't isolated incidents of individual stupidity. They were mass movements, collective madness that swept through entire populations like a virus. Why does this happen? Why do the most ridiculous, shallow, and often dangerous ideas spread like wildfire while profound truths struggle to find an audience? Friedrich Nietzsche had a brutal answer to this question over a century ago, and it's more relevant today than ever. He wrote, "Madness is rare in individuals, but in groups, parties, nations, and ages, it is the rule." Think about that for a moment. The very act of joining a group makes us more susceptible to madness, not less. The herd doesn't make us wiser. It makes us more prone to collective delusions. But why? What is it about human nature that makes us abandon our individual judgment the moment we join a crowd? The answer lies in what Nietzsche called the most dangerous force in human society: herd morality. Nietzsche made a shocking claim that most people still find uncomfortable. Morality itself is nothing more than a herd instinct. It didn't evolve to help us find truth or make us better people. It evolved to keep us compliant, predictable, and equal. Morality is the herd instinct in the individual, he wrote. In other words, what we call our moral compass is actually just our internal GPS designed to keep us within the safe boundaries of the group. This explains something crucial about viral ideas. They don't succeed because they're true or profound. They succeed because they make us feel like we belong. They give us the warm, fuzzy feeling of being part of something bigger than ourselves. Consider how this plays out in our digital age. The ideas that go viral aren't the ones that challenge us to think deeper or question our assumptions. They're the ones that make us feel smart without having to do any real intellectual work. They're the intellectual equivalent of fast food, instantly satisfying but nutritionally empty. When someone shares a meme that destroys the opposing political party with a single image, they're not engaging in serious political discourse. They're performing membership in their tribe. They're saying, "Look, I'm one of you. I believe what you believe. I hate what you hate." The content doesn't matter. The tribal signal does. This is why conspiracy theories spread so effectively. They offer their believers a sense of special knowledge, of being part of an enlightened minority that sees through the lies everyone else accepts. But paradoxically, they achieve this by creating their own herd, a herd of supposed non-conformists who all think exactly alike. But there's something even deeper at work here. Something that Nietzsche understood about human nature that most of us would rather not face. We're absolutely terrified of standing alone. In the 1950s, psychologist Solomon Asch conducted a series of experiments that revealed just how far this terror extends. He showed people a simple line matching task. Which of 3 lines matched the length of a target line? The answer was obvious. A child could get it right. But here's the twist. Asch placed real subjects in rooms with actors who were instructed to give obviously wrong answers. When their turn came, about 75% of real subjects gave the wrong answer at least once. They literally denied the evidence of their own eyes to conform to the group. Nietzsche saw this psychological weakness as the fundamental barrier to human greatness. He wrote, "He who would learn to fly one day must first learn to stand and walk and run and climb and dance. One cannot fly into flying." Most people never even attempt to stand alone. They never learn to trust their own judgment over the groups. They never develop the psychological muscles needed to think independently. It's simply too scary. And why is it scary? Because throughout human history, being expelled from the group meant death. Our ancestors, who were too independent, too questioning, too different, they didn't survive long enough to pass on their genes. We're descended from people who were really, really good at conforming. This ancient programming still runs deep in our modern brains. When we see everyone else believing something, sharing something, laughing at something, our primitive brain screams, "Join in or be left behind." The result? We don't just tolerate dumb ideas, we actively seek them out. They feel safe, they feel familiar, they feel like home. But Nietzsche identified an even darker aspect of herd psychology, the positive pleasure we get from attacking anyone who dares to think differently. He called this ressentiment, a deep, poisonous resentment that the average person feels toward anyone who rises above the crowd. It's not just indifference to excellence, it's active hostility toward it. Think about how this plays out in our current culture. When someone becomes successful, innovative, or simply different, what's the first instinct? To find ways to tear them down, to mock them, to find the character flaw, the hypocrisy, the moment of weakness that proves they're just like everyone else. Social media has weaponized this instinct. The comment sections of any platform are filled with people who seem to take genuine joy in destroying anyone who dares to stand out. The more someone achieves, the more vicious the attacks become. This is why dumb ideas often go viral, specifically because they mock intelligence, expertise, or independent thought. They don't just unite people around a shared belief, they unite people around a shared enemy. The elites, the experts, the know-it-alls, who think they're better than everyone else. There's a perverse satisfaction in believing that all the smart people are actually stupid, that all the experts are actually wrong, that your common sense is superior to their fancy education. It's the ultimate revenge of the herd against anyone who dares to graze outside the fence. Now, let's dig into the psychological machinery that makes dumb ideas so irresistible. Nobel Prize winner Daniel Kahneman discovered something crucial about how our brains work. We're wired to favor ideas that feel easy to process. He called this cognitive ease, the feeling we get when information flows smoothly through our minds without friction. Ideas that are simple, familiar, and repeatedly encountered literally feel more true than complex, novel, or challenging ones. This is why clickbait works so well. Headlines like, "You won't believe what this celebrity did," or "This one weird trick doctors hate," bypass our analytical thinking entirely. They feel easy to process, so our brains interpret them as credible. But there's a second psychological principle at work here that makes the effect even more powerful. Psychologist Robert Cialdini identified what he called social proof, our tendency to look around and copy what others are doing, especially when we're uncertain. When we see thousands of people sharing, liking, or commenting on an idea, our brain performs a simple calculation. If everyone believes it, it must be true. We don't consciously think this, but our unconscious mind treats popularity as a proxy for truth. Put these two principles together, cognitive ease plus social proof, and you get the perfect recipe for viral nonsense. An idea that feels easy to understand and that lots of other people seem to accept will spread through a population like a perfectly designed virus. Your brain doesn't ask, "Is this true?" It asks, "Does this feel right? And do other people think so too?" If the answer is yes, you're already infected. This explains everything from internet memes to political movements to financial bubbles. The ideas that spread fastest aren't the ones that correspond to reality. They're the ones that correspond to our psychological biases. Here's where things get really interesting. Researchers have discovered that different types of content spread at dramatically different speeds through social networks. And there's a clear pattern. Content that triggers strong emotions spreads much faster than content that simply informs. Anger spreads faster than facts. Humor spreads faster than analysis. Fear spreads faster than reassurance. Outrage spreads faster than nuance. This isn't an accident or a flaw in how social media works. It's a feature of how human psychology works. We're social creatures, and sharing emotions is one of the primary ways we bond with each other. When we laugh at the same joke or get angry about the same injustice, we're creating and strengthening social connections. But here's the crucial part. Social media algorithms have learned to exploit these exact psychological vulnerabilities. They're designed to surface content that triggers strong emotional responses because that's what keeps us scrolling, clicking, and sharing. The algorithm doesn't care if the content is true. It cares if it's engaging. This creates a systematic bias toward emotional manipulation over factual accuracy. The problem is that truth often isn't emotional. Reality is often boring, complex, and uncertain. It doesn't give us the emotional high that comes from shared outrage or collective laughter. So what spreads isn't what's true. It's what feels significant. And nothing feels more significant than something that makes us feel strongly and that we can share with others to create a sense of unity. Nietzsche understood this about human nature. He wrote, "There are no facts, only interpretations." He wasn't being a postmodern relativist. He was observing that humans don't really respond to raw information. We respond to stories, emotions, and meanings. The herd amplifies feelings, not facts, because sharing feelings deepens belonging in a way that sharing information never can. When we collectively mock the same target or rage against the same enemy, we're not just exchanging information, we're performing a ritual of tribal bonding. But here's where Nietzsche's insights become genuinely frightening. He wasn't just describing an interesting quirk of human psychology, he was warning about the civilizational consequences of herd thinking. When societies become dominated by herd values, when conformity becomes the highest virtue and independent thought becomes the greatest sin, they inevitably sink into what he called mediocrity. The surest way to corrupt a youth is to instruct him to hold in higher esteem those who think alike than those who think differently. Look around at our current moment. How many of our institutions actively reward independent thinking versus conformity to group opinion? How many of our schools teach students to question popular ideas versus to adopt the correct views? How many of our media outlets encourage genuine debate versus tribal cheerleading? The answer is troubling, and it's getting worse. When dumb ideas go viral, they don't just entertain us, they shape policy, influence elections, and determine the direction of entire civilizations. The same psychological mechanisms that make us share memes also make us vote for candidates, support causes, and accept explanations for complex problems. History is littered with societies that collapsed not because they lacked smart people, but because their smart people were silenced by the herd. The Soviet Union had brilliant scientists and thinkers, but they were forced to conform to ideological orthodoxy. Nazi Germany had one of the world's most educated populations, but education became a tool of conformity rather than independent thought. The pattern is always the same. First, independent thinking becomes socially costly, then it becomes professionally dangerous. Finally, it becomes literally impossible as the herd takes complete control of information, education, and social rewards. We're not there yet, but we're moving in that direction. And the speed of modern communication makes the process much faster than it used to be. What happens when the collective wisdom of crowds becomes the collective madness of mobs? What happens when the democratization of information becomes the democratization of delusion? These aren't abstract philosophical questions anymore. They're urgent, practical problems that will determine the future of human civilization. Resistance is still possible, but it requires something Nietzsche called intellectual courage, the willingness to think thoughts that might isolate you from the crowd. First, you must learn to recognize the physiological signs of herd thinking in yourself. When you feel that rush of righteousness that comes from sharing something that destroys your enemies, pause. When you feel the warm glow of belonging that comes from liking what everyone else likes, question it. When you feel the satisfying click of certainty about complex issues, doubt it. These feelings aren't guides to truth, they're warnings that your herd instincts have been activated. Second, develop what we might call cognitive resistance training. Deliberately seek out ideas that make you uncomfortable, not because they're necessarily true, but because discomfort is often a sign that you're breaking out of your intellectual comfort zone. Force yourself to engage with the strongest versions of arguments you disagree with. Third, practice the art of saying, "I don't know." In a world that rewards quick opinions over careful thought, admitting uncertainty has become a radical act. Most viral ideas succeed because they offer false certainty about complex issues. The antidote is to become comfortable with genuine uncertainty, to prefer honest confusion over confident delusion. Finally, accept the social cost of intellectual independence. Nietzsche was brutally honest about this. The individual has always had to struggle not to be overwhelmed by the tribe. This struggle never ends. There will always be pressure to conform, to simplify, to go along with the crowd. The herd offers immediate rewards: belonging, certainty, the satisfaction of being right along with everyone else. Independent thought offers something different: the possibility of genuine understanding, even if it comes with loneliness and doubt. Here's the uncomfortable truth, one Nietzsche would instantly recognize. We're not just surrounded by dumb ideas. We're actively creating a world where smart ideas can't survive. Every time we reward what's viral over what's valuable, we train our collective mind to crave intellectual junk food. Every time we flatten complexity into cheap simplicity, we build a culture that can't handle nuance. Every time we choose comforting agreement over challenging contradiction, we dig deeper into what Nietzsche called the grave of the spirit. The real danger isn't just that individuals believe foolish things, it's that our entire information ecosystem is evolving to produce and reward foolishness. Algorithms amplify our worst impulses and mute our best. Think about what this means for the next generation. Children aren't just bumping into bad ideas here and there. They're growing up inside systems that systematically rewire their minds, exploiting the very weaknesses Nietzsche warned us about. He put it starkly: what does not kill me makes me stronger. But he also hinted at the flip side: what makes us comfortable makes us weak. And we've built a world designed to keep us as comfortable as possible. The result? A kind of intellectual diabetes. We've gorged on so much mental sugar, we've lost the ability to process real nutrition. Many can't tell profound insight from clever-sounding nonsense. And this isn't just about individual choices anymore. Structural forces now shape how ideas spread, and they increasingly work against the deep, difficult thinking human flourishing needs. We're not merely choosing dumb ideas. We're becoming the kind of creatures who can't help but choose them. Still, even now, there's a choice. The herd promises comfort, belonging, and the sweet reassurance of being right alongside everyone else. But Nietzsche offered something far rarer. The herd gives you comfort. Freedom of thought gives you meaning. You can stay safe in the herd, or you can embrace the loneliness and struggle of thinking for yourself. Because in a world where dumb ideas go viral, precisely because they're dumb, the most radical act might simply be to think clearly. In a culture that rewards conformity, the greatest rebellion might be to question what everyone else accepts. The herd will always be there to welcome you back. But once you've tasted true independent thought, once you've felt the meaning that comes from thinking for yourself, you'll understand why Nietzsche believed it was worth any price. So ask yourself, can you afford to think independently? Or more importantly, can you afford not to? Because in the end, the dumbest idea of all is believing someone else can do your thinking for you. And if you know someone who believes every conspiracy that pops up in their feed, or someone who swallows every trending opinion without a second thought, maybe share this with them. Not to prove you're smarter, but because we all need reminders. In an age where going along with the herd is the easiest thing in the world, the real revolution might simply be thinking for yourself